Everybody ready? Good. Then let's get going. Oh, I nearly forgot you guys. Hey everyone, a really warm welcome back, especially to those who've been watching the channel for a while. If you're new around here, a very warm welcome to you too. My name is Becky and I caravan mainly on my own with my two boys. Now, these days they're 11 and 14, so they're pretty useful. They've had a couple of years training, but back when we started, almost 4 years ago now, they weren't that helpful, let's be honest, and if they were being helpful, things took a lot longer. But luckily, a bit of training in those days has made them really great these days. But during those early years, I picked up a few tips and tricks for things that I thought would come in handy for perhaps other adults that are on their own, or solo travelers that are with or without kids. And so I thought I'd put those tips together into just really short videos, and then you can pick up the tips that you think might be helpful and ignore the ones that aren't. So today's tip is all about these things: ground sheet pegs. Now, I'd really rather not carry around loads and loads of stuff, but when you're trying to put an awning up on your own, or perhaps just a mat to keep some of the muck out of the caravan itself, and the wind is blowing, it can be rather good entertainment for everybody else on the campsite, but it's not so easy if you're an adult on your own. So I tried those little plastic ground sheet pegs, the sort of grey ones with the dome tops on, and they are absolutely useless. So I would definitely advise staying away from those. But I found these things, which are a very nice, what looks like a stainless steel nail. It just looks like a simple nail. And I'm sure you could make them if you just pop a washer over the top like that. And then I just peg the ground sheet down, and that gives me a clean surface to work from if I'm trying to put the awning up, and without the thing flapping around like a sail in the breeze. But the reason I went for these rather than buying just some nails and some washers is that they have these little holes in the top. And once you've bashed them in with your rather heavy mallet, and I do have a lovely lump hammer for putting things into the ground, then you can find they sink in quite a lot. Now, the way to get them out, obviously, is to pull the ground sheet just ever so slightly around them, but that can be a rather mucky experience if the ground is rather wet. And so these holes led to a very clever little hack, which is to get a bit of paracord, thread it through, and then you've got a ready-made puller, which you can just pull the thing out of the ground without getting mucky fingers, or without having to try and get a claw hammer in underneath and lever the thing up, potentially damaging your ground sheet. So that's today's little hack. I will show you how I made them. It's very simple, but in case you're not quite sure how to use paracord and how to seal these ends off and so on, let's go and have a look at what I did. Alright, so here's our box of pegs. This is what we need. So heavy duty steel ground pegs. And the next thing we need is some of this stuff. There we go, this is paracord. I've got a bit of blue and I've got a bit of grey. I think I'll leave the blue for bracelets, and we'll just use the plain old grey, and then that's nicely toned in with the domes on the top of these pegs themselves. It can be a little bit slippery, so we need to do our knots really quite tightly. But the other thing we need to do is we need to stop the end fraying. So we will burn them with a lighter, and then immediately dunk that burnt bit into this cool water. We can give it a little bit of moulding, because that hot end, once you've burnt it, is really, really hot. I mean, you can easily burn your finger on it, so don't be touching it. Alright, now the first job is to slot these things together, because they come in pieces. You see what I mean about it? It'd be really easy to make these for yourself with a washer of the correct size and a stainless steel nail. I think these are 6.5mm, and then we'll just check out what size paracord we need. So obviously I don't want to loop this big, this is far too long, so it sits nice and flat on the bottom, but the loop on the top is going to be a bit ridiculous, and it'll be a bit bulky if we put the knot on the top here as well. So let's see what the minimum is we can get away with, and then I can cut all the pieces once we've done this one test one. So this is just a little overhand knot, so both ends just slip through the loop that I've made by putting the two pieces together, and then they pull tight, and then we'll trim the excess off and burn the cut ends so that they don't fray. So I'm giving a really tight pull to make sure nothing runs and that knot is as small as it can be. Alright, good, let's just tidy this up. And burn the ends with a lighter. Either you can just blow it or you can dunk it in a bit of water. It might be tidier. Okay, now the next thing I want to try is, I've got that overhand knot, but I actually want to try it with a reef knot as well, because the overhand knot sticks up a little bit. So I want to see if I can get a reef knot to be a bit flatter, just so that the peg goes down properly still with this knot underneath. Of course the knots could go on the top, but then I think they'd be sticking out a bit more, so at least if they go underneath I can hopefully get them within the dome shape of the washer itself, so that the peg goes down properly. This is slightly more of a pain to do, obviously, because the ends are separate, so you have to trim them both off and burn them separately. And rather than dunking the whole knot, I'll just blow it to cool it down, and then give them a little squeeze to make sure all that liquid plastic is merged together. Okay, that looks nice and strong, and the knot is slightly smaller on this reef knot one, I think. So let's just check it's strong enough. Make sure it's not coming loose, because as I said, this fabric's ever so slightly slippery. But yeah, I think the reef knot looks good. Right, so I've got a whole box of these things to do, and I will catch you in a minute. Alright, well that's all the strings in, and you'll have noticed earlier on when I was setting these up originally, I had to break the plastic parts apart from each other, and that has left some really nasty sharp burrs on each of the edges of these washers. So I'm going to clean these off, just smooth them off, because they're so sharp. I'm concerned that one of the kids is going to cut their hands on it, and who needs that when it's muddy and wet and you're trying to get packed up as quickly as possible. So I'm going to try and slice some of them off with these pliers, and then I'll tidy it up with just these little files. So for most of these pegs it was just a tiny little bit of plastic, so I could just file them off, but some of them have got quite long, I guess ears you'd call them on, so just give it a little trim with the pliers and then run the file over the top just to get it smoothed off. You know, it's only a ground sheet peg, so it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, but it does have to not cut people. Alright, last one. Let's get this tidied up, and then I've got a whole box full ready to go. Marvellous. So as I said, I use these to stop the ground sheet flapping around when I put it down before I try and put the awning up, because if there's even a slight bit of wind, as soon as you've laid one corner straight, then it gets flapped up by the wind and you just end up messing around. So it's also really handy because it means you can get the ground sheet nicely stretched out and taut, so you've got a really nice flat surface, so there are no trip hazards as well. Just peg out the four corners, gradually get it nice and flat, and then you have a lovely surface to work from. Alright, so that's it. That was today's little hack. Bit of paracord in your ground sheet pegs. Ground sheet pegs, very helpful if you're an adult on your own, with or without kids. Hope it was helpful. Great to see you. Thanks for tuning in. No, that's somebody else's catchphrase. Can't say that. Nice to have you here, and bye for now. See ya.